transforming tomorrow's cities. A balanced and sustainable relationship with the natural environment is essential if human societies are to flourish. Nature helps us meet our most important needs for water resources, fuel and food production, and the beauty and peace. At the same time, climate change and natural hazards such as earthquakes, flooding and landslides can threaten sustainable urban development. The world is unbanishing rapidly. In 1950, 30% of the world's population lived in urban areas. Currently, around 4.4 billion people, 56% of the global population, reside in cities. Projections indicate this pattern will persist, and by 2050, the urban population will grow more than double, encompassing nearly 7 out of 10 people. 95% of the growth is anticipated to occur in the global south. This historically unprecedented urban expansion, often in cities already exposed to multiple hazards such as earthquakes, floods, volcanoes and landslides, has the potential to produce a similar increase in disaster risk. These developments are a particular threat to marginalized communities. With 60% of the land embarked for urbanization by 2030 yet to be developed, there is a unique, time-limited opportunity to shape a more resilient urban future by incorporating multi-hazard, socially inclusive, disaster risk considerations into urban planning and decision-making. Failure to do so presents a major barrier to sustainable pro-poor urban development. Now is the time to plan these future cities so that they are safe, inclusive, beautiful and sustainable places to live and free from natural hazard risks.
Estimated that up to 2 billion new people will be urban dwellers in 2050 than there are at present. Now, let's try and put that into context. When my father was born, the entire population of the world was about 2 billion people. It's now 8 or 9 billion, and within the next 20 or 30 years, an extra 2 billion people of that group will move into urban centres. Tomorrow's Cities is particularly interested in the challenge of the massive increased density of people and their increased exposure to disaster risk.
Tomorrow's Cities is the UKRI GCRF Urban Disaster Risk Hub, one of 12 global interdisciplinary research hubs founded by the UK Research and Innovation (UKRI) Global Challenges Research Fund (GCRF). The hub's key output is the Tomorrow's Cities Decision Support Environment (TCDSE). This is an innovative, inclusive and participatory decision approach to help urban planners and communities work together to shape cities to reduce future natural hazard and climate change risk. The TCDSE was developed by 10 city teams across the global south: Kathmandu, Rapti, Nairobi, Kyoto and Istanbul, Bazaar, Chattogram, Salaam, Nablus and Nakuru, and an international team of physical and social scientists and policy experts. The mission of Tomorrow's Cities is to reduce disaster risk for the poor in cities of the future, and achieves this by catalyzing a transition from crisis management to multi-hazard risk-informed planning and decision-making in cities in low and middle-income countries. The project aligns with the UK Aid strategy, placing research at the heart of the efforts to achieve the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals (SDGs). Going forward, Tomorrow's Cities will be a vibrant global community to practice dedicated to reducing future urban disaster risk with a focus on marginalized communities. If urban development is unplanned and unregulated, there will be a mismatch between housing, infrastructure, development, and the growing population. If land uses are not carefully planned, schools and homes will be built next to dangerous factories and busy roads, and there may not be enough hospitals, green spaces, and leisure facilities for people to live healthy and fulfilling lives. The impact of future natural hazards and climate change on these cities may not be considered, and the opinions and the needs of the poorest and marginalized groups within these cities may not be considered in the planning process. Tomorrow's cities addresses these challenges and the urgent need to break disaster risk cycles and open new policy spaces for shaping of future cities. This brings inclusion, scientific foresight, and the policy opportunities to cities experiencing rapid growth and natural hazard risks, including those of climate change. The TCDSE aims to facilitate multi-sectorial, people-centered, evidence-based, transparent, and accountable decision-making. It acknowledges the systemic nature of the causes of disasters and advocates for all the facilities inclusive, multi-sectoral engagement of scientists, engineers, politicians, economists, private sector groups, and critically, representatives of the urban citizens who will live in the cities of the future. Urban development plans made today will either brighten or blight the lives of citizens for centuries. The TCDSE consists of 5 distinct components and a capacity strengthening program. Deployed in full, it provides world-class cutting-edge natural hazard risk assessment, including climate change, using physics-based methodologies to inform people-centered future urban development. The TCDSE enables city actors and citizens to understand how decisions made today can reduce disaster risk tomorrow. The 5 main stages of the TCDSE are: Future Visioning. Stage 1 uses participatory planning methodologies to explore desired urban features with different city stakeholders. These plans include future land uses and urban assets, as well as policies to tackle the negative impacts of future natural hazards.
Future visioning is mostly about trying to understand what do people want to see in the future, and of course we are using the lenses of cities to understand that. So we're trying to understand what does the good city look like, but for different people. In the Tomorrow Cities Decision Support Environment, we have a unique take at future visioning. We initially understood, or since the beginning we understood that we couldn't build a method, a future visioning method that worked as a one-off method. So we needed to build a future visioning methodology that worked as a journey, as a trajectory that we embark on with people, with the participants.
Visioning Scenarios Development, Stage 2. Render these desired futures into detailed virtual representations that make future visions more realistic and grounded in data-driven trends. Expected land uses are adjusted to meet planning standards and population projections. Further visioning scenario iterations enable a detailed refinement of policies and urban plans.
We basically rely on the future visioning workshops and activities that are conducted by our social science team, basically. And here they basically try to gather the aspirations, future aspirations, concerns and dreams of the communities with respect to their urban context and disaster risk reduction. But we cannot translate those properly into some sort of, let's say, tools that can, or let's say outputs that can be analyzed with respect to impact modeling. So the way we are approaching the process is visioning scenario development is the transition and the translation of those visions, future aspirations, into some proper outputs.
Hazard and Impact Modeling, Stage 3. subjects visioning scenarios of forecasts of future earthquake, flood, and landslide impacts. This analyzes the future consequences of decision-making before a brick is laid. Maps of damaged states combined with different impact metrics, number of casualties, displaced households, etc., enable a clear visualization of the spatial distribution of impact and help diagnose the key drivers of risk.
The computational model is really the technical backbone of the TCDSE. So what we do is we take the visioning scenarios that are developed and we subject those visioning scenarios to multiple hazard scenarios. We then assess the impacts of those hazard scenarios on the physical infrastructure of the visioning scenario. And then on top of that, we also understand the effects of the hazards on wider society through what we call social impact modelling.
We compute the consequences of those hazard events in terms of a loss that's associated with the impact of that hazard. So in that way, we can assess the consequences of making different choices about the urban development layout, and we can consider different effects. So as well as considering just the impact on the physical structures, we can also compute the consequences of the disruption that's caused, for example, by schools being closed or by the transportation network being disrupted. So it gives a more holistic view of the impacts of hazard events than just focusing on the hazard events themselves.
Risk Agreement and Learning Stage 4 uses a bespoke Tomorrow's Cities web app and other digital tools to reveal the forecasted hazard impacts on the urban plans and policies developed in Stage 1 and 2 of the TCDSE process. Participants unpack the consequences of spatial and policy decisions and how they increase or decrease disaster risk. They also assess the equity of risk distribution across space and the impacts of planning decisions on the poor and disadvantaged communities in the event of earthquakes, landslides, and floods. Critical learning on the relationship between risk and policy decisions leads to a further opportunity to modify plans to minimize risk.
Risk can have very different manifestations, and we are trying to quantify risk using different impact metrics, such as the displaced people from houses, or the casualties, or the affected hospitals, or the affected job places, or the affected educational facilities, and so forth and so forth. And of course, all of those may have different effects depending on who is the community that is affected.
Implementation Pathways Stage 5. The final TCDSE component takes the lessons learned from TCDSE deployment to the decision makers, politicians and policymakers who are planning future urban development. Workshops and an action planning process are used to identify the concrete city-specific steps to enable TCDSE uptake by stakeholders, including strategies to address skills, knowledge, and capacity gaps in partners' organizations. These action plans facilitate collaborative city shaping involving city, society, and government actors at various levels and ensure a commitment to implementing the lessons learned. The broader ambition is that TCDSE uptake will catalyze pro-poor participatory risk-informed planning in partner organizations, and this will become a sustainable future of their decision-making culture.
The TCDSE is a sophisticated risk modelling and forecasting tool coupled with a participatory planning process. It links natural hazard science and future forecasts of risk with community visions and plans, so that these plans are inclusive and reflect and respond to the future risks that localities face. It's our hope that through the uptake of these tools and processes by stakeholders, tomorrow's cities will contribute to the development of a pro-poor, participatory and risk-informed decision-making culture amongst partner organisations.
Capacity strengthening. The National Society for Earthquake Technology, Nepal, NSET, with the support of experts from tomorrow's cities, national and international teams, has developed a sophisticated training program to support this process.
One of the main objectives of tomorrow's cities is to empower city-level stakeholders on implementation of TCDSE process. One of the approaches that we took is to train national level and city level experts so that they can apply TCDSE in their cities and make their cities resilient independently. International team of experts in the leadership of NSET developed a comprehensive training package that includes the presentation materials, participants' workbook, an instructor's guide, and in addition, we have the instructors from many countries where tomorrow's cities work globally.
This will ensure we have the tools, expertise, and capacity to roll out the risk-informed planning process.
Over the past 5 years, capacity strengthening program on TCDSE has trained over 464 individuals across various cities like Rapti, Nablus, Chattogram, Bazaar, Salaam, and Nakuru. The participants were from various fields like social mobilizers, policymakers, even community members, and technical people like engineers, architect, and urban planner. They have gained critical skill and knowledge in participatory, inclusive, and multi-hazard risk-informed planning of their future cities.
Online options also include a massive open online course, MOOC, offered in partnership with the United Cities and local governments. The Tomorrow's Cities has implemented in 10 cities: Quito, Istanbul, Kokana, Kathmandu, and Nairobi in first stage, and Dar es Salaam, Nablus, Rapti, Chattogram, and Bazaar and Nakuru. In each city, our approach adapts to account for specific challenges and opportunities. Impact is already noticeable in the 10 cities that have been part of Tomorrow's Cities. Quito, Ecuador. Using art and culture to discuss risk and purpose nature-based solutions. In partnership with the community of Santa Rosa de Parmasque, Tomorrow's City partners led by the University of San Francisco de Quito mapped landslide risk and developed plans that highlighted the role of nature-based solutions for risk reduction. 2 public exhibitions hosted by the Quito Architecture Museum and the Yaku Water Museum attracted hundreds of visitors and were key to disseminate local knowledge and scientific evidence. Istanbul, Turkey. Revising strategies for improved earthquake resilience. In collaboration with the Bayuk Kikmi district authorities, Tomorrow's Cities and Bogazici University led efforts to revise development strategies focused on earthquake risk assessment of the peri-urban area of Istanbul. Results are being shared with Marmara municipalities, Union, the Metropolitan Municipality, and United Cities and Local Governments Middle East towards the replicability and upscaling of solutions. An open exhibition enhanced public awareness of earthquake risk for more than 25,000 inhabitants. Kokana, Kathmandu, Nepal. Protecting cultural heritage and informing national risk management policy. Greenfields development can create tensions among communities, planners and developers as it entails choosing what to change or protect towards the future, including cultural heritage. As Tomorrow's Cities partners the Institute of Engineering, National Society for Earthquake Technology, and South Asia Institute of Advanced Studies assisted in illustrating earthquake, flood, and landslide risk associated with development choices and facilitated negotiations involving local leaders. Insights are being incorporated into Nepal's national risk policy by the Disaster Risk Management Agency. Nairobi, Kenya. Upgrading informal settlements in a risk-informed way. Kenya's dynamic policy environment opens opportunities to address flood and fire risks through urban development planning in informal settlements. As Tomorrow's Cities partners, Nairobi City County and Africa Research and Impact Network collaborated in building capacity and facilitating community-led planning workshops in Kibera, the country's largest informal settlement. The approach celebrated insights of local residents for the consolidation of policy commitments. Nablus, Palestine. Strengthening locally led development through multi-stakeholder governance. With An-Nazar National University and the Nablus Municipality, Tomorrow's Cities is consolidating an understanding of earthquake and flood risk in areas designated for urban expansion. Local youth, women, civil society leads the residents from high rises to low-income areas shared their experiences and priorities to inform the planning process. Data methods and learnings gained from these engagements are currently being integrated into planning for climate change adaptation and earthquake risk resilience policy at the local and national levels. Rapti River. Inclusive planning for a new provincial capital. As a planned new provincial capital spanning across 3 local municipalities, Rapti's development necessities includes community engagement and evidence-based solutions. Tomorrow's Cities framework deployment was led by the Provincial Infrastructure Development Authority of Lumbini and assisted by National Society for Earthquake Technology, Nepal, NCET, Institute of Engineering, South Asia Institute for Advanced Studies, Practical Action Nepal, and Nepal Development Research Institute that integrated future visions of indigenous and marginalized groups into the existing master plan. Comprehensive flood risk assessments are contributing to institutional learning and sustainable change. Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. Municipal capacity building and strengthening of local leaderships. Within the rapidly growing Dar es Salaam, climate change and urban growth are increasing concerns for planners and authorities, with flash floods and landslides becoming common hazards. Together with Temeke Municipality and Ardi University, Today's Cities is working to build capacities so that practitioners and local community leaders can exchange knowledge and plan with future-oriented perspective. Community-led plans emphasize spatial and policy choices that stem from experiences related to age, gender, and housing security differences. Cox's Bazar, Bangladesh. Equitable and low-risk tourism-led development. The coastal city of Cox's Bazar is undergoing significant transformation from smallholder agriculture to high-density tourism-led development. Considering risk from cyclones, storms, surge, landslides, and climate change, the Tomorrow's Cities team from Dhaka University is supporting the inclusion of local perspectives, including those of women and indigenous and landless groups, in the development phase of the Cox's Bazar City Authority Master Plan. Chattogram, Bangladesh. Securing livelihoods and equitable growth in a changing rural area. Chattogram is a megacity in southeast Bangladesh facing a variety of hazards, challenges including cyclones, floods, and earthquake risk. Alongside Chattogram University and authorities, Tomorrow's Cities is contributing to the equitable and risk-informed urban development of Bairag, a rural area close to water bodies which currently attracts diverse residents and livelihoods. Engaged groups include farmers, fishermen, landless individuals, and landowners. Their insights will feed new risk-informed urban plans. Tomorrow's Cities started its work as a research project and from 2019 to 2024 was funded by UKRI and GCRF to work with partners across the world to co-produce innovative methods and best practice and develop the Tomorrow's Cities Decision Support Environment, TCDSE. This has been a wonderful journey. The Tomorrow's Cities team has engaged with hundreds of researchers, civil society and public sector actors and communities to change the way risk is understood and incorporated in city shaping. We now begin the next chapter in this story. The project is now the Tomorrow's Cities Community of Practice. This is a global network of communities, planners, policymakers, business leaders, researchers, and educators whose core aim is to sustain Tomorrow's Cities mission, values, and ways of working through peer support and exchange.
The world is at an inflection point, and cities are at the heart of this. Together, we face rapid urbanization, planned and unplanned. We face climate change and other natural hazards associated also with the changing landscape of cities, with concretization and increased demand for basic services. And we face a new policy environment associated also with demands for climate change resilience, but also for increasing participation in shaping cities. The Tomorrow's Cities project has been a collaboration between researchers, policymakers at city and national level, and also with communities that are facing risk and at the forefront of reducing that risk. Through our journey together over the last 5 years, we've tested and built a methodology that we believe, and we have evidence to show, can facilitate cities and their universities and their residents to work together to map out a more inclusive, risk-sensitive pathway towards future urban cities. There are 3 core components of this approach, which you will have seen across this video. And they seek to, first of all, provide voice, so to bring the perspectives of diverse urban residents into discussions about the future. That voice is then translated into a policy relevant language, and we use geographical information systems for this. That language allows us then to bring in the second dynamic, which is science, to test the ways in which the desired futures expressed by these diverse urban stakeholders stand up against the testing environment that natural hazards and climate change bring. And thirdly, to combine all of this knowledge, the knowledge of science, and the knowledge of local residents into the policy environment. It's policymakers that have the power to shape cities in the future, and we hope that the methodology provides those policymakers with the right inputs from science and from local residents to shape a future that, yes, indeed is risk sensitive according to the science, but also builds inclusivity. Resilience, after all, is the coming together of a physically secure but also politically inclusive future. So we hope that these methodologies are useful for you. We continue as a live community of practice that spans across policy actors and researchers. So please do join us, and we look forward to seeing you in the years to come.
Come, join us. Let's see tomorrow's future today and make good plans together so that our future cities are beautiful and safe and for everyone.